one of the pitfalls on the path and the irony of the spiritual process, right, is that putting freedom off, like if you're going to take up the project of being spiritual, going on the spiritual path, walking that life, doing those practices, the very idea or thought of putting enlightenment into the future admits to yourself of your own unenlightenment in this present moment. And so the idea of putting freedom into some future state denies yourself of its possible realization that's already available to you. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about this kind of dichotomy and how we can still feel the immense benefits from meditation and realize that it's a worthwhile practice to take up and to develop mindfulness within our reality, but to go on this path as sort of an initiate to some goal in the future is also to deny yourself the possible reality now.
Yeah, no, that's a difficult question to resolve. Because on one level, it's true in the beginning, or at least seems to be true enough so as to be everyone's default starting point. I mean, in the beginning, you recognize that you have a problem, right? You're not as happy as you want to be. You suffer unnecessarily. Your attention is continually bound up in thought. You feel like a self. You don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I say the self is an illusion, right? I mean, like you're stuck. But you become sufficiently, let's say through a drug experience or through some peak experience that just comes over you for whatever reason. You get a glimpse of a different way of being, and you become absolutely convinced that there is a there there. There's not just a matter of religious belief or some new age fraudulence, right? Like you don't have to believe. It's not that you've taken on a new set of ideas. You've had a taste of something where you recognize, okay, it's possible to have a very different experience. Consciousness can be different than it's tending to be in my case. So how do I get there? Right, I have to recognize I'm not having that experience on a daily basis, and that is felt as a problem because I'm seeking to be happy, and I'm just not as happy as I could be, and I'm just gratifying one desire after the next, and yet there's this way of being that I know is possible, how to get there. So there is this duality of path and goal already set up, and it seems unavoidable. And when you're given a technique like mindfulness, again, start at that starting point, which is virtually everyone's starting point, you can't help but engage it dualistically, where you're just now you're trying to meditate. You recognize that distraction in thought is the problem. It's not that thought itself is the problem. You're not trying to suppress thought, but you are trying to recognize thought as thought, and you're finding that difficult because thoughts sneak up on you, and all of a sudden you're dreaming about lunch, and you forgot that you were trying to meditate, right? You were trying to follow the breath. You're following in and out, and then I wonder what's going to be for lunch, and you didn't see that happen. You didn't feel that happen. It just became you, and for a moment there, the whole project of meditation seemed to be interrupted by the dream about lunch. So it's within that's the frame in which you're now engaging this spiritual path, and it is dualistic. You're lost and found, right? You're meditating, and then you're not meditating, and then you're coming back to meditating. And even when you're being mindful, the experience of being mindful is, they're really, in my framing, there are really two stages to the path of mindfulness. There's the dualistic starting stage, which can last for a very long time, and then there's the non-dual stage of where you can actually locate freedom and selflessness directly and become mindful of that, right? And so it's the dualistic stage I'm now describing, where the problem you just posed is just very captivating for people. It's like, I can't pretend that I'm at the top of the mountain because I'm at the bottom of the mountain and I see the path, disappearing into the mist up there, and I'm trying to walk it, and yet I'm being told by everyone who's teaching this technique that it's not that the ego is real and that you meditate it out of existence. It's not that you actually polish a brick into a mirror. It's not that there's nothing to really accomplish. You just have to pay sufficient attention to recognize that. It's the paying sufficient attention part they can seem laborious and can seem like you're doing something, and it's almost by definition gradual because it doesn't appear to be here now. But the truth is, it's actually not. There's an illusion here that just has to be penetrated, and when that happens for anyone is just a matter of, luck on some level. It's not that you can't do things that are valuable to sort of orient toward it, and the practice of meditation is the most valuable thing I think anyone can do to become available to this insight. But when you have this insight into selflessness or into non-duality or emptiness, depending on how you want to talk about it, one of its hallmarks is you recognize, okay, that this was always already the situation, right? This is not something newly created by my meditative efforts. This is, there are many analogies. No analogy is great, but these are various analogies that I've used. One is that have you ever been? You go into a restaurant or a store, and there's a full length mirror along one wall, like floor to ceiling mirror, and you might have let's say it's a restaurant. You might be halfway through your meal before you recognize that everyone over there on that side of the room is just in the same people you're sitting with, but they're in a mirror, right? So like the restaurant is like half the size you thought it was, right? That sudden phase transition is psychologically and perceptually interesting because nothing has actually changed about the visual experience, right? Like the light and the color and the shadow is all the same, but you suddenly have this new understanding of what is real, right? And you can make one way to sharpen that up is like, let's say the mirror is such that it's really just not clear, even if someone told you that over there, that's not the world, that's a mirror, right? You're being confused by your eyes, but you could imagine a mirror, sufficient, set up, in an artful enough way and reflecting just, the right part of the world such that would not even be obvious even if you were staring straight at it and given the instruction, no, you just have to look at it closely enough. You'll see there's no depth to that circumstance. There's just this, you're looking at light on a wall. You're not looking at people and events and, beautiful and ugly, and nothing's happening over there, right? You're confused. But imagine what would happen if, let's say a teacher, a Dzogchen master, a Zen master, somebody who could actually get through to you on this topic. They walk over to the mirror and they just put their hand right on it. They just wrap their knuckles on the glass. And all of a sudden, given that stimulus, you might say, oh, okay, well now I see it, right? But nothing has really changed, right? It's like it was there, you were looking at it the whole time, and yet now you have this conclusive understanding of what is what. An analogous thing happens with mindfulness where you're paying attention to thoughts and sensations and emotions, and you're getting lost in thought and coming back to the breath and coming back to the feeling of walking or whatever the object of mindfulness is at the moment. At a certain point, the sense that there is a meditator, the sense that there's a center to this experience, the sense that there's a thinker in addition to the flow of thought, the sense that there's a place from which you can aim attention to be meditating on anything, all of that just disappears, right? Like the center drops out and you discover your own absence in a very conclusive sense. And then that becomes the thing you can be mindful of.